Many people don't believe in coincidences. As a matter of fact, they believe that everything is the result of a calculated move that leads us to where we are. However, there are some occurrences in life that disputing the thought of a coincidence becomes unreasonable. Number 5. The Lincoln and Kennedy's assassination. The similarities and coincidences between these two leaders are greatly intriguing. To start with, both Abraham Lincoln and Kennedy were assassinated while they held a high office of president in the United States. Both of them had also created their own money system to run the United States while they were in office. President Lincoln needed money to finance the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. But then he was greatly distressed when he realized the bankers were going to charge him 24 to 36% interest. He was a man of principle and couldn't allow his country to go into debt that would be impossible to pay back. Eventually, he was advised to get Congress to pass a law authorizing the printing of full legal tender treasury notes to pay for the war activities. The treasury notes that were printed were worth $400 million with green ink on the back, earning them the name greenbacks. They were both debt-free and interest-free. Shortly after the war ended, President Lincoln was assassinated. Congress revoked the Greenbacks Law and enacted in its place the National Banking Act. National banks were to be privately owned and national bank notes issued were to be interest-bearing. This leads us to the assumption that Lincoln was assassinated by an agent of the bankers. No other U.S. president after Abraham Lincoln went against the system to create their own money until President Kennedy came into office. On June 4, 1963, President Kennedy signed a presidential document called the Executive Order 11110, which further amended Executive Order 10289 of September 9, 1959. This gave Kennedy, President of the United States, a legal clearance to create his own money to run the state. Money that would belong to the citizens, interest-free and debt-free. It was only a few months later, in November 1963, that the world received the shocking news of President John F. Kennedy's assassination. This, plus a number of other similarities and coincidences, were realized after Kennedy's assassination. These include Abraham Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. Kennedy elected in 1946, 100 years apart. Abraham Lincoln elected president in 1860. John F. Kennedy elected in 1960, 100 years apart. Both presidents were shot in the head on a Friday. Andrew Johnson succeeded Lincoln and was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson succeeded Kennedy and was born in 1908, again 100 years apart. John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln and was born in 1839. Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated Kennedy and was born in 1939. Lincoln was shot at the theater named Ford. Kennedy was shot in a car called Lincoln and it was made by Ford. And to finish with the most famous coincidence, a week before Lincoln was shot, he was in Monroe, Maryland. A week before Kennedy was shot, he was with Marilyn Monroe. Comment below with some of your favorite Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences that we didn't include here. Number 4. Bruce Lee predicted his son's death. The circumstances surrounding the tragic and sudden deaths of Bruce Lee and his son, Brandon Lee, hold several eerie similarities and undeniable agreed-upon facts that are very strange coincidences, to say the very least. Not only did they die unexpectedly at the young age of Bruce at 32 and Brandon at 28, they were both filming their 5th feature film, and both died just before the release of the films that would make them huge stars. Enter the Dragon in 1973 for Bruce, and The Crow in 1993 for Brandon. Bruce Lee died in Hong Kong on July 20th, 1973, while filming Game of Death, 3 weeks before the release of his biggest film, Enter the Dragon. Many rumors surrounded his death, including a hit by the Triads, a delayed reaction to a Dem Mock strike, also known as the Death Touch, he had supposedly received in a fight earlier in the week, or a family curse that previously took his older brother and would eventually take his son. Brandon was killed on March 30th, 1993, while filming the biggest film of his career, The Crow. As with his father, many conspiracies surrounded his death. Officially, it was determined that he was accidentally killed by a lead tip of a bullet that was unknowingly lodged in a gun that was then loaded with blanks and fired at Brandon during the filming of his death scene. There's also the thought of the family curse, or conspiracy. There may not be foul play or a curse in either Lee's death, but one can't deny the fact that in a Bruce Lee movie, Game of Death, there's a scene that was shot in 1978. 15 years prior to Brandon's accident, that would prove to be a premonition of Brandon's death. In the scene, Bruce Lee's character is an actor in a movie within the movie. Prop guns are replaced with real guns, and Bruce Lee's character is shot and seemingly killed. He ends up not dying, but pretends to be dead and comes back to seek vengeance on the bad guys who tried to kill him. If you are deep into conspiracy theories, this would mean Brandon is not dead and he'll punish those responsible for his death, much like he did in The Crow. Number 3. Twin Tragedy. In July 1975, a 17-year-old British man named Erskine Eben died in Hamilton, Bermuda. He was fatally struck by a taxi driver while riding a moped. This was just the beginning of the weirdest instances of coincidences ever recorded. In July of 1974, Erskine's older brother, Neville, then also 17, was also killed on the very same moped in Hamilton, Bermuda, on the same street by the same taxi driver who was carrying the same passenger. In a majority of instances, the story was shared online with the source said to be the book Phenomena: A Book of Wonders, published in 1977 by John Mitchell and Robert J. M. Rickard. In a more credible reference, there's an article in the Royal Gazette published in May 2011. The article reported that in that month, Reader's Digest reprinted the story of the 1975 Rhodes death, which included the bizarre tragedy titled What Are the Odds? That was reported on July 21st, 1975, in a front page carrying the headline Incredible Coincidence in Road Crash Deaths. A possible explanation for this could be Bermuda has a limited landmass, and its capital, Hamilton, spread over a small area, having a limited number of population, about 1,700 people as of 2016. This means in 1977 through 1975, the population could have been much less, which limited reported road accidents. The number of cabs and people that used them could have been similarly smaller. So the possibility of the two brothers being run over by the same taxi driver carrying the same passenger on the same road would be that small. Number 2. Man survives atomic blast at both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The B-29 bomber sliced through the clouds of the Japanese city of Nagasaki on August 9, 1945, unleashing a 22-kiloton plutonium bomb, also known as the Fat Man. The blinding white light that followed was sickeningly familiar to Tsutomu Yamaguchi, an engineer who just 3 days before had been severely injured in the atomic attack on Hiroshima. Tsutomu Yamaguchi endured the 2 separate attacks and lived to tell the tale. When the bomb fell, he was preparing to live in Hiroshima. The 29-year-old was on a 3-month-long business trip for his employer, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and August 6, 1945 was supposed to be his last day in the city. On the morning of the attack, he was walking to Mitsubishi's shipyard a final time when he heard a drone of an aircraft above. It was an American B-29 bomber over the sky, dropping a small object connected to a parachute. Suddenly, the sky erupted in a blaze of light, which Yamaguchi later described as resembling the light of a huge magnesium fire. He had just enough time to dive into a ditch before an ear-splitting boom rang out. The shockwave sucked him from the ground, spun him in the air like a tornado, and sent him hurling into a nearby potato patch. He'd been less than 2 miles from ground zero. His face and forearms had been badly burned, and both of his eardrums were ruptured. Yamaguchi found 2 of his friends who also survived the attack. After spending a restless night in an air raid shelter, the men awoke on August 7th and made their way to the train station, which was somehow operating. The journey took them through a nightmarish landscape of flickering fires, chattering buildings, and melted and charred corpses lining the streets. At one point, Yamaguchi was forced to swim through a river with floating corpses. Upon reaching the station, he boarded a train of burned and bewildered passengers and settled in for the overnight ride to his hometown. He arrived in Nagasaki in the early morning of August 8th. He limped to a hospital, got treated, but upon reaching home, his family members couldn't recognize him. He was severely injured and had bandages all over. On the morning of August 9th, Yamaguchi dragged himself out of bed to go to work. While in a meeting with the company director, who demanded a full report on Hiroshima, he was trying to explain to his superior how a single bomb wiped out the entire city when the landscape outside suddenly exploded with another iridescent white flash, enduring another horrific war attack. He was hit by yet another surge of cancer-causing radiation, but he emerged relatively unhurt. For the second time, he'd been fortunate enough to survive. In the days that followed, he got sick from what he believed was a double dose of a radiation attack. He slowly recovered, unlike other victims, and went on to live a normal life. He said in his speech, having experienced atomic bombings twice and survived, it's my destiny to talk about it. Number 1. Edgar Allan Poe's macabre tales come true. Poe's only novel, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, was published in 1838. Partway through the book, the crew of a ship named Grampus find themselves with a busted boat and no food or water. They manage to catch a tortoise and strip off its shell, but eventually, in order to survive, they draw straws to figure out which one of them is sacrificed to provide meat for everyone else. Richard Parker, a mutineer, is promptly stabbed to death, his head, hands, and feet thrown overboard. This keeps alive the remaining crew a little bit longer, but still on the brink of death when they're finally rescued. Poe actually called the story very silly, but here comes the real twist. In 1884, a yacht named the Menonet left England, headed towards Sydney, Australia. The yacht wasn't meant to sail the world, so it didn't come as a surprise when it sunk. Its four-man crew barely escaped in a lifeboat, but definitely did not have provisions for survival. They caught a turtle to eat, but just like the crew in Poe's tale, they needed more if they were going to survive. One man, a 17-year-old Richard Parker, fell over and then made the mistake of drinking seawater to quench his thirst. His health went down fast, and that's when the other men decided they would kill him to ensure their own survival. After stubbing Parker in the throat with a penknife, the three men devoured him. They were rescued just days later. The case became quite famous in England. The men went to trial for their crime. Two of them, originally sentenced to death, were later amended to 6 months in prison. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to check out our previous videos and click that subscribe button for more updates. Take care.